So today I took a walk to the closest food place to get dinner. And while I was headed there, I kept thinking about this chronic condition I have called being single. Some days I romanticize it as this period of my life where I need to build and make money and blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. But other days I can't help but feel like I'm doing this to myself. Anyway, I'll get back to that in a minute. So I entered the restaurant and I found myself in the midst of at least 5 pretty ladies. And I honestly don't know why it's always when I dress poorly, well, not poorly, but not proper, that I stumble into situations that I wish I didn't. So a few other guys were there anyway and ordering food, and I guess 2 of the ladies were with them because they kept calling to them and asking about what they wanted in their meal. I had to wait for like 30 minutes or more because they were just so slow. It's like they didn't even have consideration that somebody was standing behind them. Anyway, I'm a pretty tall and fairly good-looking guy, objectively speaking, so I can usually spot interest in women because I see them so often. And I could tell one of them was already interested. So she stood up, she came over to the counter and, was waiting her turn. And I know she stood up because of me, because all the while she was sitting down until she glanced at me, saw me enter the, place, and then stood up and came to stand just beside me, in the pretense of waiting for her own turn to get food. Yeah, that might be me just reading it wrong, but I'm fairly certain that's the reason she stood up. Anyway, the universe literally created the perfect opportunity for me to speak to her because the restaurant was practically empty after the guys left. The guy at the counter went inside to get something for some reason, and her friend went out temporarily. It felt like, okay, this is literally your shot. Like, bruh, it couldn't have been more perfect an opportunity for me to just be like, hey, and start a conversation. But the best I could do was good evening. I'm face palming, just so you know. It literally felt like she was waiting for me to say something, say anything, and she was just hanging around and hoping I, started the conversation because I'm the dude, right? And the best I could say was good evening. She just smiled, looked back at her phone, and I could tell she was literally waiting for me to continue the conversation. And for some reason, I just couldn't. I don't know why. Now, I'm not an awkward person, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I just feel like my system just decides when it wants to feel confident and when it doesn't, because I've been in situations where I literally felt like a Casanova. I was basically talking and, wooing my way in conversations with multiple girls at the same time. I just felt in my zone. And some other times I'm just so self-conscious and, critical about everything I say because I don't want it to come out wrong or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, all I could think about on the way back, because, of course, she finally got what she needed to do and left. And all I could think about was how I blew that opportunity, and that's why I'm single, and that's why, and I just feel like, okay, that's probably a part of it. The fact that, I don't know, or I'm scared of opening up and showing vulnerability or interest sometimes because I fear rejection. Maybe somewhere in my soul that's a thing. But I also think it's like the way walking up to women has become sort of like this weird thing, by the internet. And I know the internet is not a real place, but, we can't help the fact that it influences our behavior and decisions. They've turned it into this kind of creepy thing that men do. And look, I know there are actual creeps in the real world, but how do I walk up to a woman without feeling like a creep? Because that's all I see, or that's how I see the women on the internet interpreting it as, like, oh, why would this guy walk up to me? And so I start thinking to myself, like, am I disturbing her? Am I, am I creeping her out? And I'm not a creep. I'm just literally trying to have a conversation. Maybe she caught my eye. I was trying to get to know her. Here's the paradox, because again, like I said, I knew she was interested, or at least she found me attractive because I could see the signs. But still yet, I couldn't, capitalize on that recognition of that, of the fact that she was interested. And I don't know. I have made up my mind to be more, assertive in these situations when they present themselves, because one thing I know is that opportunities never, stop, they never cease. So I'm definitely going to get another chance. And, women never finish. Beautiful women are, they're in high, supply. They're a lot. They're everywhere. That's not really the problem. It's just I was upset with myself because this is something that I thought I was above, but apparently subconsciously somewhere it's still a thing where I am awkward and shy around, I'd see, certain women, because again this is not the usual for me. But the reason I even made this video is, are we doing this to ourselves? Because a lot of the time people tend to romanticize their pain or their conditions as a way to cope with it or deal with it. I see the motivational speakers online say, oh, this is the period where you need to buckle down and, get the job done, lock in, the lock-in epidemic, how it goes, where, they're isolated. And sometimes I feel like, okay, is this an actual, season that you're actually going through? Or is this just you, unconsciously giving up on dating or women and, using that as cope, using the lock-in as cope, saying, okay, you don't have time for this because you're doing this and that and this. But how many of us are really, I'd say, examine yourself honestly. Do you feel like there is a problem in your social life? It doesn't even have to be romantic, but like, are you okay socially, emotionally, romantically, and you're just choosing to lock in, as they say? And if that's the case, then by all means proceed. But if the truth is that, you would like to have a partner, you would like to have somebody, a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, and I think you need to examine yourself and really get to the root of the problem instead of, slapping a band-aid over it and calling it a day. You have to wash the wound. You have to disinfect it. You have to make sure it heals. And so if this is just cope, then I don't know, maybe like, tend to the actual problem and, make your life happier. Because the truth is, our problems don't avoid us. If we continue to avoid our problems, they don't leave. They just stay and wait until you're ready to face them. So the sooner and faster you face them, the quicker and sooner you'd be done with them and, healed from them. So yeah, this is just a video to say, just a rant really, because I needed an outlet. And yeah, in sharing this video, I hope it helped somebody out here or out there or out anywhere. Yeah, that's all from me for today. Yeah, see you guys.